Hello, people of Defend the House, and welcome back to another one of mine and Jameson's long talky videos. We first planned this series to be monthly, and I think we kept that up for
2 months.
2 months. But then there was a bit of a break when it comes to like AAA games or games just worth talking about, and we were waiting for like a month where like 3 or so games came out, and it just took a while for us to get there. But finally, we found a collection of games that we think are worth talking about. One is Prey, which is from 2015, I think, by now.
Prey came out, like, in May?
Yes, the beginning of May. So Prey's an old game.
Ancient history at this point.
We haven't talked about it in any format, in any video. We haven't talked about it on the podcast. Patreon exclusive podcast. And after that, we're going to talk about a indie game, which wasn't on my radar at all. I didn't even know it existed until you told me to play, and that's called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
There we go. Yeah.
And lastly, Uncharted: Lost Legacy, which came out very recently.
Yeah, as of this recording, simply days ago it came out. That's how on top of it we are with Uncharted.
But it should be a good chat. Yeah, very varied lineup here. But we're going to go chronologically and start with Prey from years ago.
Prey sort of seems like it's from years ago.
It really does feel like a long time ago.
Not just like time. Prey really made me think of quite a few games from 2014. It seemed like a game...
2014?
Yeah. So it seemed like a game that would have been perfect, or it seemed like a game that would have come out in 2014, in that it's a really good game that not a lot of people bought or played, and not like super critically well received. So 2014 had Sunset Overdrive, it had Wolfenstein, it had Alien Isolation, it had like 3 or 4 games.
2014?
Yeah.
Christ.
3 or 4 games, and like those games are all, I think, really amazing, but they were sort of, sleeper hits, not like super well reviewed. They were fine. They're like all reviewed fine, and people but people sort of were like, oh, this game's actually really good. And I'd say Prey, if Prey had come out in 2014 alongside the likes of those 3 games, it would have like fit right in, and it would have, I would say it would have been received exactly the same way then.
Yeah, so where do you want to start with Prey then?
I don't know. Prey is weird.
Well, start with it can slot into the shock genre, the Bioshock genre.
Yeah.
You are on a space station, it has been overrun with aliens, and you can explore, loot. In Prey, you could explore in a non-linear fashion.
Yes, that's probably the biggest change. Like, it's...
Yeah.
A lot of it is like alarmingly inspired by the Shock games, but then the fact that it's like kind of open world-ish almost sort of sets it apart. Yeah, because I don't really know about the System Shock games. I have not played them.
No, I'm looking forward to hopefully trying the reimagining / remake that's coming next year.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I think System Shock 2 is maybe a little more open. But, our main point of reference is Bioshock 1, 2, or 1 and Infinite. And those games are, like, intensely linear. Bioshock, Infinite obviously is, like, mega linear. But Bioshock 1 is also, it's a completely linear game. You've got sort of large-ish areas, but they're not that giant, and there's no backtracking, really, or anything like that. So,
isn't there backtracking?
Maybe a little bit. I don't
think it's
I don't know.
What do you call it? Encouraged, though.
No, it's not really necessary. I think you actually you might be able to like go back to the prior areas through the weird airlocks or whatever, but I don't think I ever once did that.
I think it is part of the story. I remember you fixing a lift, which is like near the beginning. You go through a few areas.
Yeah,
but it's not quite comparable to what Prey does.
No. Prey is like the Bioshock games combined with what Arcane does, which is these sort of vast open-ish world level design, like freeform sandbox sort of philosophies. They give you a whole bunch of tools and a really big really detailed level, and then they just sort of say
immersive sim.
Yeah,
Immersive sim
that's
genre.
the genre name, even though it's kind of a silly name. But that I think was what makes Prey different. There are a few other ways.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure
It really does feel like an arcane game.
Oh yeah.
It really, really does.
It really does. Yes.
Especially playing it so closely to Dishonored 2.
Yeah, it was kind of weird having two of their games out in like a 6-month period, because prior to Dishonored 2, it was Dishonored 1, which was years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Their games are not like anything else out there, I will say.
Yeah, they got a cool style.
Yeah, and I don't know if they'll be able to continue making games like this, because Dishonored 2 and Prey both didn't sell very well. But it's hard to say. Bethesda is a weird publisher. They sort of don't care, I feel like. Like they don't...
I mean, they're making The Evil Within 2.
Yes.
Don't think anyone played the first one, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see where they... like what Arcane does next. But Prey... there's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
I will say that initially it seemed like it was going to be very Bioshock-esque in that its story was really appealing, because the first hour is like really, really good, with lots
really
of
good opening, yeah,
intrigue and style and some good sort of plot twists, I'd suppose you call them. And I was super interested in the story, but then like 3 hours in, I just sort of stopped caring about the story and was finding a lot of pleasure in other areas that were not story. And I think that is deliberate, because I feel like the story is, it's fine, let's say. I know you hated it, but like I wasn't very invested, and so I thought it was just like, whatever.
Spoilers. Yeah.
Like I said, like not being invested in it, if it was a Bioshock game and I was super invested in the story and then it went the way the Prey story did, I would have been kind of like, oh, that was not very good. But like I said, a couple hours in, it just sort of felt like they weren't super interested in doing the Bioshock story thing.
It felt like they tried.
Yeah.
And I didn't like what they tried. I don't want to... Well, maybe we'll get into a small spoilery section near the end. I mean, it's been 4 months now, but just in case people are waiting for like Steam sales or something, we'll do a little spoiler warning, and I'll talk about the ending at the end. But as you said, we should talk about the gameplay systems, because they're good. They really are good, and it's a fun 20 hours of playtime. I enjoyed what was in the game. We should probably talk about the enemies, because the game is you're on a spaceship and it's been overrun by aliens. Not a very creative setup, but that's what you're given.
Yeah.
And I think a big like selling point was the mimics, and it was showing, ooh, we got some interesting enemies here, and they blend into the environment. What did you think about the variety of enemies across the game?
Enemy variety was definitely not the greatest.
Yeah.
I really like the enemies though.
Me too, actually.
But there's only,
like
there's the mimics, there's like the different variants of the humanoid phantom dudes. And then there's, the telepathic thing and
yeah, the big blob.
The Weaver or whatever it is that like sort of flies around really quickly, and that's kind of it. And then there's that one other enemy, but he's not really an enemy as much in the one that you fight regularly. The Nightmare, whatever.
Oh yeah, the Nightmare's cool.
But yeah, I would have liked a little more variety in them, but at the same time, the enemies are really effective in that game. The whole game has a really good, like, uneasiness constantly.
Near the beginning, more so, yeah.
Oh, definitely more so at the beginning when you're weak and you're not comfortable. Like, yeah. It's the first few hours of the game are, like, genuinely spooky, but the fact that, like, a mimic can be anywhere... even when you get the telescope that shows you where mimics are, it's still spooky, or not spooky, but it's unpleasant or uneasy, not just because of the mimics, but also because of the phantom dudes. Like, some of them can move around so quickly.
Yeah.
And can be super aggressive and on normal. At a certain point, that game became really easy, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a power flip, like halfway through the game.
Yeah, it's a little Witcher 3-ish, where it's like, this game is impossible, and then it's like, this game is too easy.
Yeah.
But I have slowly been playing it again on a harder difficulty, and it's maintaining that sort of, it maintains that uneasiness, I think, more so on the harder difficulties, because you take a lot of damage really quickly. And some of those enemies will just like attack you, and then they'll just like fly across the map and disappear again, and you'll have to heal up, and then you want to hunt them down.
There could have been a few more novelties. I feel like they started off really strong with the Mimic, and I really, really enjoy the Mimic. You kind of start to get a little bit oblivious to them because you just hit them with a wrench, and then there's like a more evolved version of the Mimic later on, who's more difficult, and then suddenly there's like a burst of 5 of them, and then suddenly you're like, actually, I am getting destroyed by 5 of these mimics scrapping up my face. So I really like the design of the Mimic. I thought there was a little bit more room for creativity, maybe, in the enemy side. Yeah. Like when it was the telepathic enemy, which was neat. He was bringing back corpses, I think, so they were fighting on his side. Or he was controlling alive people. I can't remember how it worked.
Living people are being controlled, yeah.
Yeah. It would have been cool if he like got in your head and did something with your mind, like maybe, I don't know, flipped your controls or something weird.
Like the
just a few more.
What are they called in XCOM? Yeah, there's enemies in XCOM that mind control, and they can take over like all your soldiers, and then you just lose. Yeah, yeah, something more to affect you. Yeah, would have been kind of fun.
I think I feel that way about quite a few aspects of the game.
Okay.
There's a lot of subsystems in the game. There's powers, there's weapon upgrades, again, very similar to the shock genre.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the powers, I didn't really feel like I had many creative uses for them. There's a really cool power where you gain the Mimic's ability to turn into objects in the environment. And I was really waiting for a section where you have to become like a coffee cup to do like a platforming section because you have to be small.
Yeah.
But the whole game, it's mainly just used to get inside buildings and get like under windows. And I was just a little bit disappointed by how unexperimental the game turned out to be. I thought maybe I could combine my powers, and I looked through the achievements, and there's a few interesting combinations, like you can make a duplicate of yourself and then mimic into the duplicate to become like a version of yourself. But I wanted more of that in terms of gameplay and maybe puzzles. I mean, I like puzzles. I know I can't ask for every shooter game to have puzzles in it, but I just thought when it comes to the systems and the weapons, that there could have been more to it. In the game, you have some interesting weapons. You have like a foam gun.
Yeah, the glue gun.
Your glue gun. I really thought that was going to be a little bit more interesting than making paths up a wall and slowing down people. Because at the beginning, you use it to like fix a electrical box that's leaking and sparking everywhere. And it's like, ooh, okay, this is going to come into play, and this is going to be really interesting. And it just doesn't really come into play later on in any unique sections. And I guess that's the pain of letting the player explore in any way he wants, because they have to design it around like, what if he's in this area and he doesn't have the glue gun? It's not a linear game, so I guess you can't format the game around someone having specific weapons and specific upgrades. But I thought that was really cool mechanics, and I wanted to see them utilized in creative and cool ways, because I think we had this conversation in Zelda that it's very easy as a player to not be creative and just to use the powerful weapons you have. Like, when you fully upgrade the shotgun in this game, it's a powerhouse, and it just destroys everything. Yeah. And I was just finding it really hard to figure out fun ways to fight things. I was like, should I mimic into a turret? Is this a good idea? But then every time I mimicked, they kind of spotted me instantly, and I was like, this isn't very useful. So, I don't want to complain too early. We've got more things to get into. But some of the systems, I feel they could have allowed for some more experimentation and built some of the game design around just using them in fun and creative ways, if that makes any sense.
I remember saying almost those exact words about Zelda's gameplay systems. I don't know why this is the case, but Prey was the game that made me understand why people like games like Zelda or Fallout so much, where they have, and Dishonored as well. Why people like these games that have so much freedom. I am well documented at being terrible at using gameplay systems like Dishonored. And Dishonored is kind of not a great example because you get the most OP thing in the game right at the beginning, which is the blink teleport ability. But, Dishonored, I played it through by stealthily crawling through the whole game and have never gone back to it. And you have so many different things you can use in that game, and I just never use any of them. Same with Hitman. I've done each of those missions once and have never gone back. I don't know what it is, but Prey made me understand that and also got me experimenting with the systems more than any of the games like it before.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why, but like I think the open-endedness of the game is like pretty incredible, and in so many different ways, like the gameplay push-pull of like these powers are good, but then the alien powers are also strong, but you will be shot by turrets. Like that stuff is interesting, but the stuff that I like the most is just like the glue gun. You can just like climb up to an area you're not really supposed to get to, it feels like, and it's sort of janky to get there, but you can just do it, and I really, really like that. The that escape pod in the Arboretum, what's his name's escape pod?
Alex, I think.
Alex's escape pod, and you can you have to activate a bridge to get to it. I just fucking glue gunned my way there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just the other day in my second playthrough, I glue gunned my way there, and I was like, it's janky in just the it's janky in just the right way that it feels like when you get to where you're going, it's really satisfying. Like it feels like you're sort of going outside of what the game wants you to do, but that's not the case with Prey because they want you to do whatever. But this
really feels like our Zelda talk all over again, where you've kind of figured out fun ways to use the systems, and I had the opposite experience, where I was like, I wish the game had made areas and forced me to use it, like a puzzle room with the glue gun platforming. That's kind of what I was looking for.
And that was my argument with Zelda, is like, I wish they had even just nudged me towards all these different things, but I sort of, like I said, Prey made me understand like why they shouldn't do that. And I don't know, maybe it's just like the first person, like I think it might be partly due to like the familiarity of Prey, in that it's, first person shooter, BioShock-esque, but then you've got this extra element of this enormous amount of freedom. And maybe that's why I find all the systems so fascinating. I don't know, but it's not just gameplay. It's like the way there are like a bajillion different ways to complete the quests in the game. And like every single thing you do is tracked. Like I dragged a corpse into the do you remember like later in the game you get to this like little chair and you can like you have to put a dude in it and scan his brain? I dragged a corpse early in the game to that area to try and like see if you could scan the corpse's brain. And I left it there and then didn't see that area for like another 15 or 20 hours until the game was almost over. And I get there and the body is still just lying in the chair. Like the way that the game is seeming like like every single thing you touch seems to stay exactly where you left it throughout the whole game. And then also the fact that you can just like you can literally kill every single person in that game. And I'm doing that on the second playthrough, and like you can kill the character that's always talking to you, telling you what to do. And
oh wow,
so
the robot guy?
Yeah, they're both dead. January and December, they're both dead.
Oh, it's a quiet playthrough there.
It's a very quiet playthrough, and it's fascinating. Like I've never been interested in doing that in Fallout, you know, where you can kill all the NPCs. But this game, I was, when I discovered that you could just kill the NPCs, the story NPCs, I was like, okay, I have to play this again and murder everyone to see.
Can you kill your brother?
Yeah, not early, but I think once you meet him in later, you can absolutely just kill him the second you can actually, you know, get to him. And I just find that fascinating that it's this on the surface very much a BioShock game, but then there's all this other crazy freeform open world like systems that are, I don't know, they just all came together in a way for me that is that other games haven't, and I'm still playing it. Like I think I have like 30 hours in it now, and I'm not anywhere near through my second playthrough. And when it's done, I kind of want to do another one and see like what crazy weird stealth stuff. I've heard that you can do a stealth build where you just like sneak around and one-shot every enemy in the game, and that sounds weird and cool.
It's interesting to me that this game kind of captivated that part of your imagination,
I know,
but you didn't with Dishonored, because they feel similar system-wise to me.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know what it is that caused that. I'm not sure.
Psychology.
Yeah. Maybe it's because a lot of the I was gonna say a lot of the things in Dishonored are like deployable, you know, like traps and mines, but they're not. You've got a huge number of powers in Dishonored too. I don't know why that's the case with this game, but it is, and I really friggin' love Prey, and was surprised. It surprised me by the way it, you know, like I said, the way it made me experiment with game systems in a way that I haven't before. So good for them, because I've been always mad at myself for being unable to do that in games, and it's
You've done a bit of a switcheroo, it seems.
Yeah, weird. I know.
Well, the thing is, because I wasn't like you, and I wasn't capitalizing on these systems, and I was just kind of, I don't like to call myself an uncreative person, but, you know, I was just trudging along, doing what I thought was interesting. But because I wasn't just basking in the experimentation, I was kind of focusing and hoping on the world and story.
Yeah.
Which turns out was not a very good move.
I will say that I think there's actually a lot of really like good low-key writing in the game. It's not...
I liked the alternate reality stuff. Or this talk about like the Kennedy Space Initiative. Because in this reality, Kennedy wasn't assassinated. Like all that stuff, when I picked up, I read that and I thought it was fun. Yeah,
that stuff's fun and weird. And then also, I think like the emails are sort of benign and uninteresting in a way that I really liked.
Okay.
It's all just like, it's not like BioShock, you know, where you have this ridiculously colorful character pontificating constantly over a PA system. You know, there's nothing like that, and I think that's probably a good thing, because you need to do that like really well. And it's not like the audio logs you find are, you know, the same sort of thing with these ridiculous characters saying ridiculous things. This is just, it's, I don't know. I read every single thing I found in the game and made sure to read. I think I actually got the achievement for reading everything.
I think I got that for a certain set of books, but not for emails.
Yeah, I think I got it for everything, and I liked the simplicity of it. There's lots of just normal emails being like, I can't get this open, or, you know, it's just like little. And I understand completely why you did not find that interesting, but I liked it. But also, yeah, not being invested in the story made it so that when it ended, I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, back to it. So I'll let you.
I like sci-fi stories, though.
I know.
One of my favorite genres of games is sci-fi, and it set itself up to be really interesting. It has some interesting, unique technologies, like the looking glass stuff. I was like, ooh, this is really cool. They've been thinking about this. I have to call out the fucking Alex Pod side quest, because I still can't believe what they did when you try and complete that. Did you do it?
Yeah. They just like spoil the whole thing.
They spoil the ending of the game. They spoil the whole game, and it's a side quest, like 2/3 of the way through the game, with like 10 hours left to go. And I will save a spoiler section for a little bit, but just don't do it if you haven't played Prey. Don't do the side quest because you get in the pod.
Well, don't do it if you care about the story. Let's say.
Yeah, and then something happens. And I don't know if they were trying to be subtle so that you would come away being like, ooh, what was that? I don't know. I can't quite figure out. But it was so blatantly obvious from the dialogue they delivered what was happening in the game.
Yeah.
And because of the ending and knowing the state of what was happening, I had no attachments to anything that was happening because I knew what was going to happen at the end. And then the ending was even worse than I thought it was going to be.
I think a lot of the problems with the ending are more execution because it's like,
oh, God,
it's like literally you pick. It's more actually the post-credit scene where you like literally pick, and it says like, kill them all or save them all, and you're like, okay, come on, game. Like, what are we, like 2008 morale system here?
Yeah,
I think
Fable 2.
the actual plot of it is fine, and the twist at the end is sort of fun and goofy, but poorly executed. Mainly.
Hate it. I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate the ending so much.
You saying that, yeah, because you weren't invested in the gameplay systems, you got invested in the story, and then that makes sense that you were disappointed and bummed out by it because
I was. Yeah. I love sci-fi, man. I love space stuff. And as you said, it sets up some intrigue, and I was just, because it's the shock genre and they're following the format, you expect a twist. You're like, oh, here we go. What have they got for me? And there was a twist, and it was stupid.
It is a shame because the opening is so strong. Like it's as good as, if not better than, some of the shock game openings because it does so much in like a really short period of time, and there's lots of really good like perspective changes on what you think is going on in the world. But yeah, they and there's a lot of style also at the opening of that game that is not carried through. Even though the music is, it's good and but like just the way that they did like the opening credits is like, it's cool.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, they don't really deliver on it. It almost feels like they made like this crazy open world, sandboxy sort of game, and then we're like, oh right, we should probably put a story in. Oh shit, and yeah, so I completely understand where you're coming from.
I'm gonna list off some things I like because I feel like I've been just pooping on it for like the last 20 minutes.
Okay.
I thought it had maybe the best anti-gravity / space controls in any game.
I'm so glad you brought it up because yes,
I love the way the space controls, and I love exploring outside the space station. I thought it was super neat.
Agreed.
I really liked the loot system as well. I feel like Fallout 4 really tried to make a system where you're encouraged to pick up everything. Remember Fallout 4 had the weird thing where like glue is useful and duct tape is useful, but Prey goes further where everything is useful. And no matter what you pick up, you can just break it down into components to turn into different things. And it just rewards you for being a hoarder and looting everything. And I loved it. I loved looting everything.
The problem with Fallout system is like that stuff was useful for building bases, which building bases was not useful.
That's still such a weird thing they put in that game.
I know. But yeah,
so
with
strange.
Prey, like the crafting system, the recycling and then crafting system is awesome. And yeah,
it's so satisfying as well. The sound and the way it falls out. Oh, it's
can
great.
pick everything in the and the fact that you can make neuromods, which are your upgrade points, you can just make them.
Yes,
is weird and crazy. Yes, I agree. That stuff is also awesome. I am a horrible loot hoarder in games, and I'm glad they found a good use for it.
And they also did a good job of making the game side questable, if that makes sense. BioShock doesn't really have side quests, but because of the openness, there was a ton of side quests, and it made exploring fun, and you did it out of order, and you went to places that weren't tied to the storyline. So I really liked the side quest system, and there's some decent ones that are worth checking out for sure as well.
Did you do the stuff with the cook?
I did everything I could.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can miss side quests, but yeah, I did.
The stuff with the cook was like the only like was one of the better parts of storytelling in that game as well, I would say. If you explore properly and like understand what was up with him, that stuff was really good. Yeah, there are an insane number of side quests in there. And,
there's a lot going on.
Sort of like Zelda, not all of them really give you anything. Some of them you just beat and you're like, you know, do I get something? Nope. It's just like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Be that way.
But yeah, I think that about summarizes my problems with Prey and the stuff I also enjoy with Prey. Overall, I had a good time with it. I had a very good time with it, but I had some problems which took away from the overall experience for me, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, hearing all of that laid out, I completely understand where you're coming from.
It's annoying how almost like a... How do you put this? Just like a mental approach to a game like this can impact the enjoyment of it. I mean, that can be the risk with immersive sims and games like Zelda. They really depend on you, the player. And if, I don't know, you're just not in the mood to do something, then sometimes you just end up not really getting the best experience from the game. I feel like I may have had a little bit of that when I experienced Prey. And you got the opposite this time.
Yeah, and I'm really glad I did. It was sort of...
I know, I'd rather get that.
It sort of opened my eyes a little bit, like made me understand more like why people enjoy some of these other games so much, which was nice. And yeah, I thought it would be like a one-off, you know, play through once, like a shock game, and enjoy it. But the openness of it and the crazy systems of it took me by surprise, and I look forward to continuing to play it. So yeah,
I came away with overall positive feelings towards Prey. I would still recommend it to people. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I do agree. It's there are not a lot of games like Arcane, you know, like Prey.
Exactly,
and that's a shame, because their games are really they're fascinating and exceedingly well made. And
yeah, I like Arcane a lot.
It's sort of a dying genre. You know, Deus Ex has been put on hold, and Dishonored. I wouldn't be surprised if we never see anything more of Dishonored after this upcoming little DLC or standalone game. And Prey, we're never getting another Prey game.
Yeah.
It sold so poorly, which is just, it's so sad, you know, but I am very happy it exists, and that it came out, and that I enjoyed it so much. So that's Prey.
Good stuff, Arcane.
Yeah. No Tommy in this Prey, though. I wonder where he is.
Have you played the original Prey?
No.
It's actually quite good.
Yeah, I've heard. It's pretty solid.
Really enjoyed it. I played for it twice when I was younger.
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed it. It was the first game to include portals as well.
Yes. Yeah. It's still...
It was strange.
Hilarious that this game is called Prey. Like, it literally is just
really
called
weird.
that because it's, you know, a decent four-letter word trademark title, you know, that they own.
Yeah. And then we got Pyre, which is just a few letters switch around.
Which I had to install another game in my Steam library so that I stopped clicking on Pyre and Prey when I meant to click on Prey or Pyre. Because they're literally sitting right on top of each other, and the logos are almost identical. And
Come on, developers.
Yeah.
Consider it.
Jeez.
All right, moving on. Hellblade. Senua's Sacrifice. I keep wanting to say Revenge.
First of all, what a bad name for a
start.
game.
Just Hellblade would have been cool, I think.
Why is it called Hellblade?
I was just about to ask that. Why is it called Hellblade?
I don't know. It just seems like video game names are hard to register, and so they.
She does get a sword.
She does get a blade,
sword.
and there is some hell involved, but I don't know. It's a dumb name.
It is a dumb name.
Yeah.
Sounds like an anime.
Oh God, you're right.
But Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice.
There you go.
So this is a weird thing. This literally came out of nowhere. I didn't hear anyone talking about this. And then I went on a little family getaway for the week, and I was just checking on Discord, and you were talking about this game. Made the assumption it was just kind of a nothing little indie game that no one was playing, and I got back and my sub box was kind of full of it. Everyone was chatting about it and surprised by it. You played it before me, so I'll let you go first.
I knew vaguely about it just because I had seen like the developers posting dev diaries for it like a lot of them for like several years, but I never clicked on them or anything. I had no idea really what it was. I thought it was just like a character action game, which is accurate, I suppose, to an extent.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that like it was a lot to do with mental illness, and then I was like, okay, and then I watched some gameplay and I was like, but then everyone said it's really good, so I was like, okay, whatever, it's $30, I'll buy it, I'll play it. And Hellblade is really interesting.
Yes.
It is simultaneously rather exceptional and also kind of terrible. Well, I wouldn't say terrible. What's the right word? Monotonous? I don't know. A slog?
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
I know which part you think's terrible.
Let's get the gameplay covered, because that's not the main appeal of this game. Let's just say it. It is 50-50. Well, it's not 50. It's part you walking slowly in a fairly straight line through the game, and then every once in a while you are interrupted by combat, in which you have a bad camera, weird lock on, and bullet spongy enemies that you slash out with your sword. And then also you're occasionally interrupted by puzzles, where you have to find shapes in the environment and look at them to open gates. I think,
not selling it right now.
I think both of those things are fine in moderation. I thought the combat was kind of all right in like 1v1 scenarios, 1v2 sort of things. I thought, this is, it's fine. The first half is paced pretty well for combat. There's not like a ton of it. There's 2 boss fights, and the boss fights are, they're all right. As someone who absolutely hates boss fights and think they're the worst thing in games, they were fine, and the combat wasn't really bothering me. But then the second half comes, and there's a lot of combat, and there's a lot. Are lots of fights where you're fighting like 6 or 8 enemies at a time in a tiny little room, and it sucks. And I hate the combat in the second half of that game. There is so much of it, and at a certain point, the amount of it, I'm like, it makes sense. But then at a certain point near the end, it sort of seems like, okay, there's going to be no more fighting, please, no more fighting. And then they just kept throwing little fights in.
I don't think there was enough enemy types to warrant how many enemies they were throwing at you.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's what, like 3 or 4?
Yeah, there was like 5
Maybe
of them.
5?
There was,
I don't know.
The default guy, like the bald guy with a shield or without a shield, then there was like these mini bosses.
Yeah. And I dropped it to easy very early on in the game because I was not interested in, dying or replaying sections. And even on easy, the last like sort of hour and a half of that game where all the fight, especially right at the end where they throw, I don't know, 200 enemies at you in the span of 5 minutes, I was on the... okay, literally the last fight in the game, you know which one I'm talking about, where it turns out, and I'm going to not include this in the talk, where it turns out you have to just die.
Yes, that was very frustrating.
I did not hear that line where they said, just give up, Senua. I didn't hear them say that. And so I was
I did.
fucking fighting them for like 20 minutes straight. Me too. I swear to God, I was about to stop playing the game and watch the rest of it on YouTube. Because I was so pissed off and so over the combat.
I agree, yeah.
It definitely felt like the combat, well, both the combat and puzzles, the balance was not right for either of them. There was too much of both of them in different areas, and it felt like the whole game would have been better off if they had cut like an hour of the fighting and like reduce the number of puzzles by maybe 20% or something, and it would have made the game, which is a short game, it would have taken it from 7 hours to maybe 5.5 hours but I think it would have been better off for it.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the combat more than I expected to. It really feels like my first Dark Souls, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of, this is going to sound really weird, but I'll explain. It kind of reminded me of the Batman games in a way. I feel like Batman was the first game to bring in like hand-to-hand combat where every enemy had a very specific weakness. Like in Batman, like if you have a shield, you have to jump over them. If they don't have a shield, you punch them. That's what Senua's sacrifice felt like. The shield guy, you had to kick him first. What other weaknesses were there?
How do you kick the shield guy? I never figured out how to counter him.
Oh, it was C or F, which is a melee attack.
I played on the
How did you take down the shield guy without kicking him?
I would get my focus and turn around behind him and slap. I never figured out how to melee. I never thought to look at the controls and to melee him, so that didn't help either.
Yeah, that was it gave you no indication about how to defeat the enemies, but every single one of them had a specific weakness about how to take them down. And I really like that. I think the dodging system was really generous as well, which helped.
Yeah.
You press spacebar, and if you press it in the right time, no matter what, you will get out of the way of their attacks. The voices in your head really helped as well, because they would go behind you. And that means someone behind you is hitting you.
There's a cool fight that's like almost in total darkness, and you can literally just time your blocks by, you hear them say, "Watch out behind you," and you just hit your counter button, and she spins around and counters the attack. That was a cool bit.
But there was something very controllable about the fight. I really felt like I was in control a lot, and I felt like I was good at it. It made me feel like I was kicking ass. But I still agree with you that they just put too many enemies in one fight.
Yeah.
I think the amount of fights is fine, but God, the just amount of stuff they were just throwing at you, to the point where you're like, I proved to you I can beat all these enemies forever.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to keep going on for 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't really think it's a big deal spoiling the fact that in the last fight you're supposed to die.
Sure.
Because it might save people from going fucking crazy.
You're right, actually. I actually had to alt-tab and Google it, being like, why the fuck can't I finish this game? And it's like, oh, you have to die. And I think I either did not hear or the voice line did not play. Because I did have one other little scripting bug earlier where a voice.
Well, they were saying to me, give up, but they're just voices in your head.
Yeah,
so
and they've been saying that the whole
manipulate
game.
You.
Like, or they've been giving you a lot of conflicting information.
Yeah, and the problem with that fight is I found the combat easy and manageable.
Right.
So I was getting to the point where I was really good at it, and I wasn't getting hit.
I'm jealous.
So it took me fucking forever to die in that last scene.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus
I was
Christ.
fighting for probably, like I said, like 10 minutes probably.
Yeah, so that was an unfortunate just mistake in design, I think. It's never fun to make a scene where you have to die. It's never satisfying for the player. And also, not in a scene where it's quite easy to kill everyone over and over again.
Yeah. It was good in Halo Reach. You die at the end of Halo Reach, and it was satisfying. You get overwhelmed.
That's because it was quite easy to die in that scene in Halo Reach.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, they should have made it so that it was like really hard for you to survive and keep fighting in that final fight.
You just keep pressing spacebar and you dodge everything.
Yeah.
It's hard to get hit.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yeah, so that was a misstep when it comes to the combat design. But apart from them just kind of throwing way too many enemies at you, actually, I really like the design. No HUD, it looks cool, it looks very theatrical. And it just makes you feel like a badass when you're doing well at it, I think.
That's why I said I enjoyed it sort of in smaller fights. Yeah, and because it's very cinematic, and it's satisfying and easy to hit the counters and to get a bunch of damage done. And but yeah, it was just the balance was wrong. And
yes,
and I would say the same thing about the rune puzzles, which is the rune puzzles were interesting. I thought the first half of the game actually had too much of the rune puzzles, and I thought and they were monotonous and a bit of a pain in the ass. But I thought the second half of the games, the rune puzzles were kind of better and more enjoyable. I don't know why exactly that was the case, but
I think we should just touch on the fact that the game has some really good puzzle stuff in it. And they're not just runes. There's some.
That's true. There are some
different,
other
more varied stuff later on, and I was surprised about how much I enjoyed the puzzles. The rune stuff isn't that interesting.
No.
But later on, there's some more creative stuff where you're switching between like 2 dimensions to say, and I thought that was a really cool section.
Yes. Oh yeah, with the faces that you look through. Yeah, that bit was good. Yeah. I think just the runes in the Valravn insert areas, there are just too many of them, and they're just kind of, they just involve you walking and finding the right angle, and it was the first half of the game. I got through it, and I think it took me like 2 or 3 sessions to get through the first 3 hours of that game. Then the second half of the game I played through in one sitting, and that would have been even easier if the combat had been reduced. So I think the puzzle stuff, they found their rhythm as the game went on, I thought, whereas the combat lost its rhythm as the game went on. Which is curious. It's interesting, but that's that's only the gameplay part of the game.
Yes, we should be talking about the sound.
Well, it's sort of like the other half of the game, which encompasses many things, which is the audiovisual presentation and the story stuff and the
representation of the psychosis.
Yeah, which is really the game's biggest appeal, and definitely why it's had an impact and why people have, sort of were surprised by it so much. So, in case people don't know, you play as a woman, Pictish warrior, and she is like unbelievably, intensely mentally ill. The first thing you see in that game is a warning when you're booting it up that says, this game, you play as someone who is suffering from psychosis, and psychosis is a severe break from reality and has many horrible side effects, and you might find it disturbing. So maybe don't play it if you are, sensitive to things like this. And let's just say,
they're not messing around.
No, definitely not. And mental health in video games is not a very good history of being handled well. Or even handled in any capacity. And then outside of games, mental health is still not, it's not talked about a lot. And then in movies and games and TV shows, they don't really, it's sort of, don't go there. And when they do, sometimes it's done well. There's a long history, though, of mental illness being portrayed horribly in media.
Yeah.
And Hellblade is not one of those, thankfully. They go for it. And I think do a lot of pretty amazing stuff with it. They also, if people don't know, I'm sure you will notice if you hear it in the gameplay, you have people talking to you in your head. You have voices in your head constantly. I think there's maybe 5 minutes near the end where there's no voices. It just sort of goes quiet for a few minutes.
Which is a really strange part of the game, actually.
Yeah, it is.
When it's silent for the first time.
Yeah. So there's, I don't know, what would you say, 5 or 6 voices pretty much constantly?
Oh, it's impossible to tell. There's a lot of them.
And they're mostly all female, but there is a male voice or two that come in later on, and that stuff is exhausting and not overwhelming, but it's I don't know, the first 3 hours, like I said, I only played for like an hour at a time, and a lot of it was due to just like, okay, I need to please, okay, voices, that's enough of you for today.
It is full on the whole time.
Yes, yeah. And
we should also mention they use 3D
binaural audio recording. Yeah.
Yes, which is like 2 microphones instead of 1. So you get whispers in your right ear and your left ear if you're using headphones, and it's horribly unsettling the whole time.
I even found that there were a few times where they placed the sound like in front of you very effectively. I found, and so they had actors and actresses. They would sort of walk around the room and get closer to the mic and farther away from the mic and left and right, and some of them really feel like they're literally crouched right beside you, whispering directly into
It's horrible, yeah. Here's a question. How many times throughout the games did they genuinely fuck with you, if that makes sense? 'Cause there's some times where after a while you kind of manage to blank them out a little bit because they're constantly jabbering and you get a little bit immune to it.
Yeah.
But there was some times in the game where they really messed with my head. I remember one bit specifically near the end where you can't go in the darkness. That's a really fun section, actually. You have to go from light to light, or you get something bad happens. And like there's puzzles involving you always having a torch in your hand. But when that section started, I was going down a dark staircase, and they go, the torch is going to go out. And I fucking turn around and run all the way back to the light because I'm terrified. Because I thought the torch had like an amount of... what do you call it?
A lifespan.
A limited time. Yeah, it was going to go out. So there was a few times where they genuinely mess with me. And there's some spooky bits in that game, and they do not help. They don't make it less stressful.
Yeah, the sound throughout the whole game. I mean, they do a lot in this game with audio-visual, audio-visual stuff. And it's not just voices in your head. No, there's also... What? Oh God, I've just lost it. What was I gonna say with the sound?
It's just a matter of time.
There's just a lot of. Oh, you said spooky stuff. Yes, right. Yeah. There's a lot of really unnerving sections in this game they're not.
I would say downright scary.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Those fucking the trial, one of the trials where you go into the cavern and there's the blind? Voice, or the one where you're blind as well.
Oh God.
That was spooky. I may have like flipped one of my headphone things off to ground myself a little bit. Very effective, yes.
Yes.
Very unpleasant and occasionally genuinely spooky. And then there's also a lot of crazy visual stuff. They have
there's one specific section which is really horrible.
Which one's that?
That's the one where it's very hellish. Kind of reminded me like Dante's Inferno.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they first spam enemies at you.
The Sea of Corpses.
Yeah. Oh, that was nasty stuff.
Yeah. Not only does the game look amazing, like just visually, the graphic fidelity is superb. They have seemingly like an endless number of crazy effects that they're pulling off in engine to represent, the breaks from reality, and also like the last scene where you're going to face hell or Hella, like that, just like aesthetically, like design wise, like there's a lot of like just really amazing design work. They use full motion video for all the characters basically that aren't Senua. People from her past, her father, her lover, her sort of mentor / storyteller friend, are all video of a real human beings, and they're integrated into the game like in really fascinating ways. They sort of weave into the game in a way that I've never seen video be weaved into a game before. What else? I don't know.
I think they did a good job more in the second half when it just comes to variance. The first half of the game is almost like a 2-hour tutorial where it's like, here's the room puzzles and here's fighting. And you fight like 2 bosses, and then the second section opens up and it's got like a horror section, and then it's got a puzzle section, and then it's just got the light section where you're avoiding the darkness. I really, really enjoyed the second half of the game, except maybe the spamming of the enemies. I thought it was well paced, the second half.
Yeah, and I think really the thing that is most commendable is it really is their handling of her mental illness. You slowly learn of her history, her story, and why, her family history and what her father did to her and all these different things.
Yeah.
And the more you play the game, the more and more you realize that it is entirely just a psychosis-fueled vision quest to deal with her own issues. And I really like the story. Yes, I completely agree. Yeah.
They did a good job of balancing you having no idea what's real, but somehow still being able to keep a grip on the story at all times.
Yeah, and her story is fucked up. Like she had it's very obvious why she is so broken mentally, and it's like really amazing that they were able to do it. They researched extensively. They used a lot of people and experts, who know a lot about mental illness of this caliber, and implemented it in really respectful and also really effective ways. It's not a gimmick.
Yeah, man.
It's used the right way, and it's used to tell a story, not in the, games so often that end with a twist or something, and this doesn't have a twist. It's just you sort of going along with her on her very psychotic journey to hell, even though it's none of it's really necessarily real. Yeah, and also their world was really cool. This mix of Celtic and Norse mythology.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed the collectibles, which are just basically lore stones, and it's a guy with a really good accent and a good reading voice, telling
you
you
get some fun stories.
telling you real stories of, real stories, quotes on those, of Norse mythology. Like, all the stories in there are actual mythological stories, and they're all fucked up.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, and Loki was skinned alive and, tied with his brother's intestines to a rock and dripped venom into his mouth, and it's just like, oh God, like, what the fuck? Why are all these stories so horribly miserable?
Yeah.
But they were all good. I really liked finding them and listening to them, and
It's a fun way to do collectibles.
yeah, it is.
Do you get a different ending if you find them all? Because right at the end you step through a ring and it shows you all the runes, or whatever you call them, all the collectibles you found.
Yeah, I don't know if you get any sort of reward for finding all of them. I did not, so I don't know. I should look that up. I don't think I would be surprised if it alters anything, really.
Okay.
I would bet that they show that just so you can see, maybe like see one more stone to be like, okay, what did I miss? But I'm not
maybe
sure.
get one final bit of dialogue or something.
Maybe
one final story.
Yeah, maybe. Also, I think you touched on, like, the varied creativity is impressive. There's the trials in the middle, which are all pretty good, and the spooky sort of pseudo dragon monster thing near the end with the light and dark.
I think this game was scarier than Outlast 2.
Damn.
I definitely think it was.
That bit at the end there where you're running from the shadow monster. Ugh.
Yeah.
Spooky as shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I love that area. It was a mixture of, like, puzzle and horror, which I haven't seen before.
Yeah. It was really. It's a fascinating game. I definitely have a history of being okay with games that do something really well and then play sort of, not necessarily poorly, but the gameplay is a chore. Like Spec Ops The Line is a great example. Yeah.
I can see why the combat is not for some people.
Yeah.
100%. I get it.
Yeah, but
it might put some people off.
As furious and annoyed as I was with it at times, when it was over, I have nothing but, like, positive memories of, like, I definitely will look back on and be like, that game was kind of incredible.
Yes.
And incredibly ambitious and ballsy. And, when I think back on something like Spec Ops The Line, I don't even remember playing that game. I vaguely remember it being like an incredible chore of boring third-person shooting, but
yeah, I remember one tiny battle in my brain.
But, like,
you shoot the windows and sand falls down, and that's it.
Yeah, like, that's all I remember. What stands out is the good, crazy storytelling, and that's the same. That definitely seems to be the case, similar here, where it's like, I'll look back on this and remember a very cool-looking, amazing-sounding, ambitious story about mental illness that was handled extremely well, and I think good on them. It's amazing that a little team of 20 at Ninja Theory, who have a decent history of making at least visually ambitious games. The gameplay maybe has not always been amazing, but they've always sort of tried something new with their games.
Yeah, I think you're right when you say ambitious and ballsy.
Yeah.
I think if I was a game developer and someone was like, we want to do a game focused all around psychosis, I'd be like, fuck no.
Yeah.
2017, everyone's going to be mad at us.
Yeah.
But I think you nailed it. They actually did it.
Yes,
they did it
that's
right.
the important thing. Like, ambition is good, obviously, but when it's not executed properly, it's not, the ambition means nothing, basically. But when it's executed so well and so ambitious, that sort of combines into something really impressive. So I would say if you're tolerant to gameplay that is not necessarily the greatest, you might be okay with it, you might hate it, but if you can tolerate it, it's very much worth the $30 and 6 or 7 hours that it'll take to play through.
It's definitely worth checking out at least sometime in the future.
Yeah,
even if you wait for a sale or something, it's something else. It's definitely something else.
It really is. It almost is like it's one of those games that I sort of feel like I should show to people as well, to be like, this is like, you know, people who don't play games, like family or something, be like, look at what this is and listen to it, and like, how crazy is this, and how you know, amazing is it that they did this and did it so well.
I'm surprised. It seems to be. I'm not sure of the sales figures, but it seems like a lot of people are giving it a go and talking about it and picking up, and there's kind of been an easy sell, because when you look at it, like maybe just on the Steam marketplace, you look at the screenshots and the videos, you can't really portray what the game's about through that. So just fair play to them for getting the game even recognized in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
what a thing to try.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
It's good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. She also.
Oh, right.
No, it's okay. No.
Sure.
Go on.
And finally,
speaking of psychotic women, right?
Oh,
just kidding. No, Nadine and Chloe, please don't. I'm kidding.
Hate comments, here they come.
I'm kidding.
The big shiny AAA game to round up the episode. Yep. Uncharted Lost Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Hellblade is being talked about more than Uncharted Lost Legacy. Or is that just me?
Well,
I haven't really heard anyone discuss this game or talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been out for 2 days. Wait, it's Friday. 3 days, 4 days, whatever. I don't know. Weeks. But it's also the 5th Uncharted game, you know?
Yeah.
Hellblade got a lot of press because it was doing something very new, and you know, Uncharted, it's another Uncharted game.
Yes, this is very much Uncharted 4 with some tweaks and a new story.
Yeah, so people don't know, this started out as the DLC for Uncharted 4. It was going to be like what was that? Left Behind DLC for Last of Us, you know, starring Chloe and Nadine, and then they kept working on it and sort of got it to a point where they felt like they could just put it out as a $30 or $40 standalone game, and it was made in just over a year.
Wow, really?
Yeah, well, Uncharted 4 came out last year, so they weren't really working. I mean, I'm sure some of the writing and stuff was happening before Uncharted 4 released, but they said they released it, and you know, they worked on it for not much more than a year, and you can see that because gameplay is identical. And, you know, the engine and technology and graphics are all unchanged from Uncharted 4. But this is an example of what you can do when you have your tech already established and you
ready to go.
Yeah, and you want to make something smaller in a shorter period of time. And it's, let's say, 6 hours. Because I
think I was like 6.5 to 7 hours.
Some people, you know, I mean, I definitely go through Naughty Dog games faster than I would say most people, because I feel like Uncharted especially, I don't ever really want to stop moving in their games.
Did you spend time in the open area bit?
I did, yeah. I got all of them. I got everything in that area. But
okay, yeah, me too.
But after, like, I don't care to search for treasures. I don't like dying in their games. I think I actually wish I had played it on an easier difficulty, because I died a lot right in the last section because I'm bad at Uncharted. You know, we play a lot of games on the PC now, and when I started playing Uncharted Lost Legacy, I was like, oh god, how do I? Oh fuck, 30 frames per second controllers
are scary.
Oh god. But you could definitely spend 7, 8, 9 hours with this game, but it was 6, and Lost Legacy it's pretty fucking good.
It's really good.
I would say that I might like it more than Uncharted 4.
I think I agree.
I think 6 hours is the perfect length for it.
Do you know what this feels like to me?
What?
This feels like Blood and Wine of The Witcher.
Yeah.
Where you had the Uncharted 4, and then the developers are like, well, maybe we can take this format that we have and maybe add some depth to some
Like, how can we
sections
polish this even more so?
Yeah.
And refine and learn from some of the mistakes of last time. Yes.
I mean, it's hard to go into depth because we've already talked about Uncharted 4,
Yeah.
and this is essentially the same game. We're kind of talking about basically a few levels of Uncharted 4. But
Yeah, this
wanna
is
start
not
with,
even like
like, the
half as
writing?
long as Uncharted 4, really. Eh? Like,
Yeah.
it was like 13 or 14. Yeah. What did you say?
I said maybe just start with the writing, start with the characters.
Yeah.
Because I heard some people weren't a fan of them. I thought they were good.
Honestly, I think the writing between Chloe and Nadine is the best the series has ever had, and I think they're the best duo Uncharted has ever had.
Ooh,
I think
Sully and Nate. Wow, move over.
Nate and Sully are wonderful, but they're
Yeah.
kind of comical and overwritten, and that's great and fun. But they're like constantly quipping and joking, and they always seem to have just the right line, and then they're also, this sort of male thing of like always putting on a show almost for each other.
Yeah. I think there's like an underlying tone of darkness in this game because Nadine's lost her army.
Yeah.
She doesn't really know where she's going, and it goes into some backstory of Chloe's dad who's dead.
Yeah.
And she's kind of following on his adventure. So there's a little bit of like sad undertones to both of them, some like hidden history. And with Nate and Sully, it's just like happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
Let's murder people and have some jokes.
I think a lot of the writing between the two of them is really more human than Nate and Sully had.
Yeah,
I'd
agree, yeah.
It's very... I think part of that is due to them both being women. Because men sort of... Like I said, like Nate and Sully, they're sort of putting on a show for each other all the time, in a way. They
Yeah.
both have troubled pasts. But that's not really the masculine thing to do. You got to maintain the stoic face or whatever. But the two of them, Chloe and Nadine, they miss a high five and they just laugh about it. And you're like, yeah, that's great. Or they, have a little conversation about something else. And I found a lot of the humor to be, a lot of it, I laughed a lot in this game, like chuckled quite regularly. And it wasn't because they were saying jokes to each other. It's because they were just sort of having funny things occur. And I don't know, the writing, it's like, it's just a little more normal, a little more human in its fun nature, in the fun of it. It's not...
Yeah, it kind of has that buddy cop feel where they don't kind of like each other, and like another character comes in later and like none of them really like each other, so there's that back and forth and that development. Whereas in Uncharted, everyone's kind of best friends.
Yeah, and like I said, the writing is not as reliant on jokes, like written, like written jokes. It's more them having fun together in a way. And the two of them go on a decent little character arc. Chloe's is quite good, actually.
Yes, yeah.
There's a revelation about her father sort of in the last third that was a really, really, really good little scene with good, great performance and writing and reaction. And they go on a nice little character arc. You learn more about them. They're good characters. They're well written. The chemistry between them is exceptional, and the whole thing is just very fun. I thought it reminded me of Uncharted 2. Uncharted 4 is kind of a little bit of a downer. It's a little serious, and that's good. They wanted to wrap up Nate's story, and Nate was kind of a dick at times in Uncharted 4, and they make it a little more, that game is a little more serious. And that's fine. That's a good thing. But Uncharted, what's this game called? Lost Legacy.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Uncharted 2, where Uncharted 2 is just fun from beginning to end. There's not much drama. There's not marital relationship issues or family issues. It's just a bunch of good characters having a good time from beginning to end. And that's kind of the case with this one. I had so much fun from beginning to end in this game.
Yes.
It's just a hoot, I thought, honestly. It's a blast.
I pretty much agree with everything when it comes to the characters. I will say, I think the only downside for me, and I think we talked about this in our best of the year thing, is I still don't really like the combat in Uncharted. And I think I figured out why I find it frustrating. I realized this towards the end of the game, where they've programmed the AI to be quite intelligent, and they're always trying to flank you.
Yes.
Like, always.
Yeah.
And there can be these frustrating moments where you can't take a lot of bullets in this game, actually. I'm not sure if you could take less than Nathan.
Sort of feels
The
like
screen
that,
will go...
maybe.
The screen will go dark, so you'll run away to hide, and then you'll start getting shot from somewhere else. You're like, fuck, okay. You go somewhere else, and you're still getting shot from, like, everywhere.
Yeah.
And those moments, I'm like, I just need, like, 5 seconds to regen my health.
Yes, yeah.
And I just feel like the way they program the AI, I find irritating. Apart from that, the shooting's fine.
Like I said,
climb around.
I think I think the default difficulty is this is ridiculous, but it's I think too difficult on normal for the way I want to experience their games.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast of people talking about it, and they all said they played it on easy.
Yeah.
Just from past experience, that's the funnest way to play it.
I replayed Uncharted 4 last year, like pretty much almost immediately after beating it, mainly because I wanted to go and like take a lot of pictures. But I played it on easy, and it's a lot of fun on easy.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to be an action hero. You're not supposed to be dying in a bush because someone shot you in the back of the head.
Yeah, I agree. And
make you feel like a badass.
Yeah, Uncharted games are all like they're very momentum driven, and especially in set pieces, and like when you die and you have to go back to a checkpoint, it just sucks the wind out of it. And
yes, 100%. They did. They gave you a few more tools to be stealthy if you wanted to. There was a silenced pistol.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that might have been the only tool that was implemented, but it made a big difference. If you found a silenced pistol with like 12 bullets in the chamber, you could quite easily clear out an area without having to be forced into open combat. And as someone who didn't like the combat, I managed to get through like 3 or 4 encounters completely stealthily.
Oh,
and
wow.
in 4, I know for a fact, because I remember this, I got through a single one without being caught, and it was so difficult.
Wow.
And it took me so long. So I was happy that stealth was a little bit more viable in this little expansion thing.
Yeah, I think just the way I feel that game should be played, it just should be the whole like Uncharted is very mindless, until the puzzles require a bit, but like you can really shut your brain off and just sort of go with it. And then when the combat comes up and you're dying or getting like overwhelmed, like that stuff's great in The Last of Us because you're like always on, right? I think The Last of Us, I played the second time I played it, it was on almost, I think maybe the second hardest difficulty, and it was amazing. It was stressful as hell. But Uncharted, I don't want to be stressed ever in Uncharted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do wish actually that I had played it on the easiest difficulty the first time through. But
yeah, I should have done as well.
But it's it didn't bother me too much.
Nah, I got through it. I don't even enjoy combat that much. They're kind of just an obstacle and like a pacing mechanism for me.
Yeah.
To just break up the stuff.
Speaking of pacing, I do think this is it's better paced than 4 was. I think 4 maybe a little slow here and there. The first time through I thought, fine, but I don't really, whenever I think about Uncharted 4, I think, man, I don't ever really want to replay it just because there are a couple of long sections where you just kind of walk and don't do a whole lot, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But this, I thought they got the balance of combat, exploration, puzzles, walking around, I thought was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, they actually put a lot more effort into the puzzles in this game.
They're good.
I feel like in the past, puzzles in Uncharted are kind of more like exposition, like you go into a big room and you just kind of put some tablets in the right place and it explains the history of whatever you're trying to find. But there were some really decent and difficult puzzles in this game. Some of them maybe not so creative, it's just kind of like pushing blocks around into the right location, but there was one room where there was a giant statues with the axes.
Right.
That was really, really cool. I loved those rooms, and I wish I was actually disappointed because I failed one and it hits you on the head and you didn't die, which was really disappointing to me. I was like, you should have sliced me in half. But anyway, They did some really, really cool stuff with the puzzles in this game. I think the best puzzles of the series so far.
Yeah,
I say so far. I think this is the end.
Yeah, well, who knows? I've never been a huge fan of the Uncharted puzzles. I don't know why. They just, I never really liked the logic of them. I don't know what it is, but I enjoyed pretty much all the puzzles in this. The shadows were fun.
Yeah.
The light beam one where with the prism and the red RGB color things, that it was fun. The puzzles were good. They were just the right amount of involved, I think.
I think they touched on I just had this thought when you were talking about the light puzzle. That they touched on the fact that when like Nate gets to these places, everything is pristine and still working,
right?
Except for doors. Sometimes you have to open doors, which is usually a hidden loading screen. But I really liked when Nadine had to just hold that one thing at the end because it was completely fucking broken.
Yeah,
I appreciated that. It was a nice touch.
Yes, I also appreciated that it was all set in one area. The globe-trotting nature is always fun, but it was sort of nice to just have it. It's in India. You basically go to a spot in India after the opening, which, and then you're just there the whole game basically, and you obviously are going through new environments the whole game, but it's essentially just in one, square kilometer or two of.
I mean, it helps that it just looks amazing.
Oh God, yeah. I mean. They haven't
very green, foliage-ridden, watery area, and that just always looks good in Uncharted. So it's kind of nice to sit there for 6 hours or so. Yeah,
they haven't progressed their technology in any way, but their artists are still unbelievable.
Yeah,
the vistas and the locales and the grand
the architecture.
Yeah, the architecture, texture. The scale of some of it is amazing, and the. Naughty Dog games are still kind of magical because every room you go into is like completely full of unique art assets to the point where it's like, okay, this is crazy. Like with some of those rooms you go into and they're full of like the whole wall is carved as a statue and it's like completely unique and you don't see it repeated. And it's just like,
it's incredible.
God, they must have an enormous budget.
And so much time and people and resources.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of Chinese company art houses in the credits, they have a lot.
Those credits are long.
Yes, they have a lot of artists that don't work at Naughty Dog working on Naughty Dog games. It was weird. I didn't think I wanted Uncharted 4, and then I played Uncharted 4 and really enjoyed it. And after Uncharted 4, I know for a fact that I don't want any more Nathan Drake. But it turns out Uncharted is still pretty good.
Yeah, he still has room to grow, apparently.
Yeah, and when it's this well written and this much fun, when this was over, I sort of thought, I'd play another Chloe and Nadine game.
I know, yeah, me too. Yeah,
I would play at least one more, honestly, with those two because they are really, really good.
Yeah, I think. I want to say that this game / expansion had my favorite action sequences and cinematic moments from all of the franchise. I thought the ending sequence was the best part of any Uncharted game.
Yeah, the ending set piece is basically the all set piece.
Yes.
Which, I will admit, I was actually a little disappointed by the end set piece just because...
Is it another train?
Well, it's another train with more vehicles, and it's sort of like, oh, okay, they're sort of bringing like the last 3 major set pieces into one. That was like I was kind of like, oh, I would have loved to see them do something new, but then at the same time, it's that final set piece is incredible. It's like the freedom of it, the flow of it, the back and forth train car.
Oh, yes, it's so good.
It's superb and crazy, and it is literally them going and taking the best parts of their last best set pieces and putting them into one, and honing it and using the newer technology to make the train sequence even more impressive than it was in Uncharted 2, and it was a pretty good set piece.
It was pretty good.
I really like the part where you flip the tracks and the train goes by and Nadine is on top just in this massive gunfight.
Yes.
And there's just bullets whiz past you and you're like, oh, okay, we need to get back on that train now.
Yeah.
It was a really good final set piece. The villain, I will say, he was a little boring.
Well, I felt like they've done British and they've done Russian, so they just had to find something else.
Something
and
in
we're in
between,
India.
I mean,
It's
Rafe was such a
Indian.
good, like, snivelly asshole last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
Lazarevich in 2 was, like, such a good, like, big, brutish, nasty guy.
Yeah.
I don't really know what they do. He was sort of in between the two of them, and he was fine. That's the only thing I'd say about this game that's sort of not amazing is the villain is kind of just like
Yeah, and also the plot progression is a little bit formulaic. It's the whole you're the adventurer, you open the doors, and then the villain turns up at that second, and it's like, thank you for opening the door.
Yeah.
I'm taking your hard work. And
Yes.
it's the same thing, but whatever. It was still a good time.
Yeah. I thought also they did a good, they introduced a lock-picking mechanism, and they paid that off really well. There's a good bit where you have to, pick a lock underwater, and that was
that was
a
stressful.
good
I
moment.
like that.
And there's a good moment with an elephant as well. It was a nice sort of
Yeah,
peaceful...
they learned from the Last of Us giraffe scene that people like that stuff.
Yeah, and
And it was awesome.
it was only 3 sittings, 3 2-hour sittings, but it felt a little longer. It felt like when it was over, I was surprised that it was only 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I left it being... I went in sort of expecting to be just like, okay, another Uncharted. And I left going like, oh, that was great.
Fuck.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I might replay it. It was just, the one thing we didn't talk about that is new is the 4th chapter is sort of open world. It's sort of
Yeah,
this...
a little open area for you to explore at your leisure.
Yeah, they did the Madagascar sequence last year. That was, you're driving around and you can get out whenever. But it was still you moving in a straight line. It was just a wide corridor. This one is a giant circle, and there's a little side quest with a bunch of collectibles you can find, and each of those has a little puzzle associated with them, and you can sort of do it in whatever order. And it was a neat sort of change of pace for Uncharted.
Yes, it worked. It worked well.
Yeah. I left Lost Legacy feeling a lot better about The Last of Us Part 2. Even though, obviously The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be an exceptionally well-made game. No doubt about it. But seeing the way that they are experimenting with new things and refining and polishing and better improving older design mechanics made me much more interested in seeing what they do with Part 2.
Yeah, 100%. Because Uncharted 4 really had influences of The Last of Us inside it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see Part 2 and see how they progressed.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us could be a pretty nice spot to have some wider, more open areas, cities and towns and stuff like that. And I also deeply appreciate very early in that game, you use a crate, and then you use a crate again, and it falls through the ceiling, and they're like, okay, we're never using a crate again. I almost stood up and cheered because there were a lot of crates in The Last of Us and Uncharted 4, and it's so lazy. It's just like, oh, we have to, what's the obstacle in this room? Oh, we have to get up 9 feet instead of 4 feet. Oh, well, let me find this crate and drag it over here, and then I'll just climb up it and, repeat 30 times. Well, not quite that many. But...
it was just like just a mini puzzle, which wasn't very satisfying.
Yeah, and they say no more crates, and they actually do bring a crate up once more late in the game, but it's not Chloe or Nadine's choice to use the crate. It's the third character that shows up throwing the crate down, and they're like, okay, we'll use this, I guess. But they're aware. Naughty Dog is self-aware that the crate puzzles were kind of shit in those last 2 games, and it was good. I really was very happy when they said in the game we're not using any more crates.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, so it was a great surprise. It's perfect time of the year for it. There's not much out. Just a nice 6-hour, couple of sittings, linear.
Very, very comfy playing.
Yes, very much so. And
I just think it's something that you shouldn't miss if you like Uncharted. It's some of the best of the franchise.
Absolutely.
6 hours, comfy, easy playing, good fun. There really isn't much reason to not pick it up and play it.
Yeah. It's $30-$40, something like that. And You also get the entire Uncharted 4 multiplayer. Like all the DLC and stuff they've put out is included, which is cool for those that care about that.
I played a few games of it. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
There's also a survival mode, horde mode that they've added, I think.
Oh.
And that's included in this as well. That was DLC for 4. So, you know, if you care about the multiplayer, it's a pretty good package, I'd say.
Yeah.
But even without it, it was perfectly enjoyable. And yeah, I didn't think I would say it, but I'm okay if they make another Uncharted as long as it stars Chloe and Nadine.
Fuck yeah. I might have to agree.
Yeah.
I would actually quite happy play it.
At the same time, I kind of hope they don't. But if they want to, I'll be there. You know,
well,
for the
whatever Naughty Dog
6th
puts out, I'm going to be
Uncharted.
there.
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Well, I hope that turns off in a few seconds.
Oh, my God, what is that?
It's the fire alarm.
Jesus. How do I mute you? That's better. Are you gonna die?
I think I'm gonna have to end this and come back.
Or just end it like this?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you just record an ending?
Okay. Go not burn, Jameson.
Okay.
Alright, so that rounds up our triple review. Went through Prey, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, and Uncharted. I'm laughing because I can still hear that horrible fire alarm. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you soon in the future. There's some good games coming out towards the end of 2017, and I'm sure me and Jameson are going to play them and have a chat about them. So we will see you then. Goodbye!